All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Second hour of the program. It is very rare that I wish I could have a do-over on interviews. But ladies and gentlemen, the topic that we're starting hour two with is a story that, we're doing it partially because I wanted a do-over. One of our guests was on a little while back, and I just remember the phone line was terrible. So it was just hard to do the interview because of just a bad phone line, which happens sometimes in this business. And the story was so complex, and it is back in the news. So I said, I want a second shot. Ladies and gentlemen, we're starting off this hour by talking about the ArriveCan app and the controversy swirling over the cost of that app and the whistleblowers that say something is not right in how that app played out. Joined in studio this morning by Ritika Dutt and Amir Morv. They are the founders of Botler. It's an AI company, and one of their AIs tries to find the misuse of funds in government. And I think they're just perfect to discuss this issue this morning. Ritika, Amir, welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having us, and it's good to be here in person today. I think there's a lot of important things that we want to discuss.
So important. And listen, I know a lot of our listeners weren't fans of the ArriveCan app. And I think we can debate, well, was it useful or not? But this doesn't have to do with the usefulness of the app. This has to do with how it cost Canadian taxpayers, what are we up to? $54 million. Ritika, I want to start with you on this. Maybe tell the story here. Take us back for Botler, your company, and the sort of trying to expose government waste. Take us back to where your part of this story begins.
Sure. So this is a long, convoluted, complex story, but long story short, this goes back to 2019 when we were called in by the CBSA to work on a different program. We're not related to ArriveCan, but we were called in for the use of our AI solution to help with workplace harassment and misconduct. And throughout the process of kind of working with the CBSA and their partners, we started just noticing misconduct and kind of keeping track of everything. And along the way, we realized, there's a lot of things that are definitely not right here. And the parties that we were dealing with were the same parties that were involved with ArriveCan. So eventually, we put them together and we started reporting to the CBSA and the government. So
CBSA, for our listeners, right, that's the Canada Border Services Agency, right?
That is correct.
And when you say you start to see stuff, right? What do you mean by that? What were you seeing that was saying, hey, something's wrong here?
Well, I think the first and foremost is that we were seeing very strange relationships between the contractors and the agency itself. We were seeing things play out in ways that just, it seemed off. It was kind of a gut feeling at the beginning before we learned the rules, and then we kind of studied the policies and we said, okay, well, these really are not lining up with how things should be done.
So I think a lot of people, if they saw that kind of situation and they say, wow, the government's just throwing out money here and not asking a lot of questions, I think most people would say, how do we get it? How do we get in on it? You know what I mean? Like a lot of contractors would say, hey, there's no oversight. They just give in contracts. They don't look at anything. Let's do the same thing for our company. What was going on in your head saying, no, can't do that. like other companies, we've got to do something about it. What take us to that, the moment you decided to raise the flag on this thing, because a lot of people wouldn't raise flags.
You're absolutely right. And I think it would have been so much easier to just go along with it than do something about it. But at the end of the day, Botler is a misconduct detection AI, and we can't really say that we're doing misconduct detection if we're not walking the walk and we're just talking the talk. So we realized that, look, this is something huge. Just because it's the government doesn't mean that we can close our eyes and kind of bury our heads in the sand. Yeah. We have to come forward about this.
Amir, let's bring you into the conversation in with regards to this investigation. So what was Botler detecting? What were the things that work? And maybe you can get into just how that works. Do you have a big computer where you get a red light once they detect something? How does that even work?
Sure. So we have a very simple web app that everybody basically can use. They can go to our website, and this web app receives a statement and analyzes that statement against a set of policies and rules, and pretty much gives you an idea whether that statement is a violation of any rules and policies. So at the early stages, we identified that some of the contracting around our app was in violation of some of the CBSA's policies. That was the very early signals for us to detect basically something is going wrong. And we started discussing this with some of the CBSA employees. They validated our findings. And honestly, from there, it just grew and it got bigger and bigger and bigger until November 2022, where we submitted a very big report to the CBSA president and the leadership, and they started their investigation since then.
So there are hearings that were happening up until last week in Parliament related to the ArriveCan app, and they were halted. So the Liberals, the Bloc, and the NDP all got together to halt the hearings, and it was because, quote, it was described as a scary, secret preliminary report from a federal investigator that, of course, the politicians had access to. They saw this report. They said, this is too scary to let into the public realm. Let's stop the hearings. I'm throwing this to either of you. What does that, like, what can you tell us on that? When you heard that they stopped the hearings and it's scary, do you have any idea what they're referring to in that scariness?
Yeah, sure. So we were called actually to testify in front of the same committee, and we were part of the investigations, and they're actually conducting a study. They're not conducting an investigation. So what happened during the course of the CBSA's and also other government bodies' investigation?
Including the RCMP.
And including... Well, the RCMP, we don't know anything about their investigation yet, but a series of milestones actually happened last year. And the most significant one was the suspension of two very senior government officials earlier this year. And the scary reports that the media is referring to is a report by the CBSA, which they call it Project Helios, apparently. And that report really outlines what are the allegations around these two senior public officials. And what we believe, and again, I think what happened was that the hearings didn't actually stop based on what we heard. They're paused, and the reason that they paused the hearing is because, again, they reached a stage that I think the investigations are going towards a specific direction. So from our interaction and from our experience, it is normal for some of the investigations to remain out of the public purview, especially for a case that is very, it received a lot of public attention. So for the integrity of the investigation, sometimes it's normal to keep public outside of it until the investigators reach a conclusion and come forward. What we learned is that there's a pause. I don't think the hearings actually stopped, but that's a decision that the MPs made, and yeah.
I want to talk about the $54 million figure, right? That's we see often. Is that was that the red herring here? Because like in your estimation, is it impossible that an app could cost this much? I don't even know how much development and that kind of stuff costs. So is that 54 million just so outrageous that, someone was going to discover this? If it wasn't you, someone else would have discovered it?
Yeah. So to be clear, we didn't actually discover anything specific about ArriveCan. With respect to the cost, I think something that is a little bit more concerning than just the price tag was the way that some of these contracts were awarded. And that raises the question as to whether the cost is inflated, or is it the right cost? Is it not the right cost? I think we're very excited to hear the Auditor General's report today. She's releasing her report in I think in an hour, and I think she was the independent auditor who actually went through the expenses of the app, and I think she's in a better position to tell us because I think she saw everything. So we're really excited to hear.
All right, continuing our chat here with Ritika, Dutt, and Amir Morv. They are the founders of Botler. It's an AI company, and they are the whistleblowers. That's the best term here. That a little while back saw that something was up with the awarding of contracts, and specifically when it comes to the ArriveCan app, which we now know cost $54 million, something wasn't right. So there's the Auditor General report is coming out today, Is this like a milestone moment in fixing things? What would you say to that, Ritika?
Yeah, so just for a bit of context, the Auditor General's investigation started when the first expose came out, but after Botler's expose came out last October, they reopened their investigation. So their new expanded investigation results are coming out today, and I think it's a huge milestone because this is an independent parliamentary body that doesn't have any other outside influence that's sharing their own findings of the study of ArriveCan. And this is specifically ArriveCan and the $54 million price tag.
Has anything changed in the awarding of contracts, whether it's with the CBSA or any other government body, since this story has come out? Have things changed?
Yeah, actually, I would say that this is a really positive outcome that's started since we came forward, is that the way that these contracts are being awarded has been changed. So Public Service and Procurement Canada, which is the body that's responsible for the spending of our tax dollars, they have put a halt on all IT-based contracts that were the same type used by ArriveCan. The CBSA has also done the same. They've suspended the contractors that were involved. And this is huge because this is our tax dollars that were kind of being funneled into these black holes that now there's actually a stop being put there.
So of the 54 million, do we have any idea like what costs were legitimate versus what costs were illegitimate? Do we have any ballpark on that of the 54?
I mean, I can't tell you about what was legitimate versus illegitimate, but what I can tell you is that a lot of the invoices were tabled to Parliament, so anybody that's interested can actually go and start looking into themselves. But what I'll say is some of the prices just didn't make sense as a tech entrepreneur.
And that's, I think when we think of government waste, that's what gets a lot of people. It doesn't matter what the story, whether it's an app or it's, the Quebec government saying, here's how much it's going to cost to build a roof. We question like how we get to some astronomical figures. Let me ask you about the business here for Botler. And I kind of referenced this before. It seems like in government, like the best policy is to say nothing and just go along with whatever's been going on. Has this, and being branded in certain outlets as whistleblowers, has this helped or hurt your business?
Well, I think I can speak a little bit about this. So definitely, being a whistleblower is not easy. I have to say it's going through the process of, first of all, try to fight the system and bring some serious issues to their attention is not an easy process by itself. So we've been dealing out of public purview for almost 2 years before coming out. And that by itself really affected our business. It really affected our mental health. It really affected everything that we were trying to achieve with the government. As a public safety company, government is our main client. So going after your main client, obviously, is not good for business. Yeah. After we came out, I have to say, like a lot of Canadians reached out to us with a lot of support. So we've seen a shift towards doing business directly with government and going towards citizens. That's something that we are exploring to do eventually, but it wasn't an easy task. But as Ritika mentioned, we've seen that things are changing, especially at CBSA. That was the main department that we raised the allegations to. They're taking these allegations seriously. So we're excited.
Ritika, you just said right now, ugly. That's the word you used about what's happened.
Exactly.
Well, why ugly? Tell us why you said that.
Well, the ironic thing is that we were brought into the CBSA to help detect misconduct, and that's exactly what we did. But I don't think they expected that we would find the kind of misconduct that we did. They thought we were just there to do something very cursory. And so when you start reporting that, the whole point is that you're supposed to bring attention and light to something. But when we did that, we started facing immediate retaliation. I mean, this entire system mobilized against us, and we're just two people facing this behemoth. So it's been difficult and it's ugly. It hasn't been a pretty journey. I think a lot of what we're seeing now is just over the past few months that's been public. But as Amir said, it's been years that we've been doing this privately, and we followed due process at every stage. We reported, we escalated it like stage by stage by stage. And then as a final resort, we went to the fourth estate to bring a full public attention to this. But it's been hard.
So are you saying that, what they wanted initially was just for show? And then they were kind of upset that you kept actually finding things because all they wanted was a show and not results?
Well, I think there was a genuine interest in implementing something that can help their employees, but I think the way that it was executed was completely derailed from the initial decision that they made. And the main problem was that we found the contracting misconduct, and we were not supposed to kind of like touch that area. And I think that was the problem that we faced. But I believe that there was interest genuinely, but I mean, we kind of went beyond the scope of what it was supposed to do.
Could this have been discovered without inside access? Like, because there's a whole bunch of things that should be public, right? Things the government does that should be on the table, and budgets and things that you can look up. But could this have been discovered without inside access that you had?
Well, we were so deeply entrenched in this, so that's why we were able to kind of piece things together. But the thing is, we're not the only people that had access to this. We were two outsiders that came and figured this out, but there were, I don't know how many dozens, scores, hundreds of people that were involved in the situation, and they were all seeing the same things that we did. So I think the bigger question is that how come there were so many other people that had access to the same information that didn't think to question it?
Has this led to someone coming to you and maybe in the business category and saying, hey, we like what you did here. Come do it. We want to find the ways. Does that happen?
Well, what we're saying is that it's coming from citizens. So our business model has always been B2B2C. We work with government to provide our service to average citizens. And what we're realizing is that we don't really need that in-between layer. So we're getting so much support from the community. Now we're reevaluating how can we just go directly to the citizens.
And just to add to that, we didn't see a direct demand for our services, but actually during our course of investigations, we found other very interesting things.
What does that mean? Like more waste,
more things,
more misconduct,
that hopefully we will be discussing them soon.
In the minute that we have left, is there something that we haven't discussed or mentioned that you think is important, especially in light of the auditor report that's coming out today? Something that we should mention before I have to let you go.
I think that we already have two independent reports coming out. First, the Procurement Ombudsman, today, Auditor General, and I don't think that the CBSA's report is that far off. So Project Helios, I think CBC reported it this morning that it's going to be out by the spring or the summer. We're going to get that information. And I think if they're saying it's scary, we're going to be able to see why it's scary very soon. And we should be, I think, as a public, really looking out for this because it's all our tax dollars that are impacted.
So eventually there will be sunlight. Amir, last thought?
Well, I think that sums it up, and we're really looking forward to shed some, to actually see some accountability at the end of this.
Guys, thanks so much. A, for coming in studio, and B, for telling our listeners just exactly why we should be concerned about what's been happening when it comes to contracts and federal contracts. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Ritika, Dutt, Amir, Morv, they are the founders of Botler, artificial intelligence company that looks at fraud detection. That's how you describe it?
Well, it's a misconduct detection.
Misconduct
we called
detection.
It's an AI detective.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.